welcome to the Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Australian writers and other creatives.
And I'm Lynn Testoni. I'm a journalist and a content writer as well. Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we're bringing you all kinds of tips, tricks, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business. This podcast is sponsored by our good friends at Rounded, easy accounting and invoicing software made just for Australian freelancers and sole traders. It's everything you need to make freelancing easier. Find out more at rounded.com.au.
Also, if you're a gold member of Rachel's List, Rounded is giving you 20% off an annual subscription plan. Upgrade to gold membership for all the details. Hi, Lynn. Hi, everybody. Great to be back here on the podcast today. And we've got another amazing guest, a freelancer who has what many would consider to be the dream job. I know I certainly wanted it to be my dream job back in the day. A journalist specialising in music and pop culture. Very envious.
Very envious. I think so. I'm really thrilled to have Barry Divola on this week. He's had a great career too, and I think he's going to share a bit about it with us today. And I think we'll all be a bit inspired, Rach.
I think so. Thank you. Tell me a bit about Barry.
Okay. So Barry Divola is a journalist, author and musician, born and bred in Sydney, but he's now living in Perth. He's a regular writer for the Sydney Morning Herald, specialising in music, the arts, entertainment, travel, popular culture and podcasts. He's also a contributing writer for Qantas magazine, the Australian Woman's Weekly. He was formerly the longtime music critic for Who magazine, a senior writer for Rolling Stone, and his work has appeared internationally in Rolling Stone, Entertainment Weekly, Spin and Monocle. That sounds great.
Wow.
Last year, HarperCollins published his novel, Driving Stevie Francasso, a book about brothers, New York and the open road, 9/11 and rock and roll. It's all the things, all the things. He's also published 4 non-fiction books, 3 children's books, and the award-winning book of short fiction, 1970-something. Barry also plays in 3 bands. Oh, he's diverse.
When do you sleep, Barry?
Radio, Star Sign, and Min Lights.
Welcome. It's so great to have you on.
Thank you. I don't sleep very much, in answer to your question, Rach. Not much at all.
I don't think you would. Oh, my goodness. And it's so funny. It's lovely to have, a big journo like you who, we know your name so well. I especially do, having a music mad husband. So it's really lovely to have you on at last.
Yeah. Hi to your husband.
He wishes he could be in here putting his head in going, okay, I've got some questions. But we didn't let him in.
Tell us a bit about your career and right from the beginning and what led you to writing about music and culture.
Yeah, well, I guess I was a nerd, basically, Lynn.
All the best.
That always helps if you want to become a journalist, especially if you want to start off being a music journalist. So I was obsessed with music since I was a kid, and I got a little transistor radio for Christmas when I was 8, and I became obsessed with the top 40, and then I started buying records of my own, and then I got into punk and post-pop punk and all that kind of stuff. So I'm so old that when I started writing about music, it was for these things called street papers, which some people listening will know about and some people won't. So I'll explain what they are. They used to come out and be put in pubs, clubs, cafes, cinemas, record stores. And they were basically people writing about record reviews, live reviews, doing interviews with bands, also covering TV, movies, things like that. And they were free. They were just out on the street every week. And I started writing for one called On the Street, and it eventually became Drum Media. And that's how I got my start. It didn't pay much, but they did pay.
Oh, wow.
Which was fantastic. In fact, looking back, the pay wasn't too bad compared to what some magazines pay today in 2022. We might talk about a little bit later about how things have changed in the media landscape. So that's how I started. And then I started moving into glossies after that. I got a gig as a sub-editor at Dolly magazine. That taught me how magazines worked. Then I got a gig as a feature writer for Countdown magazine. That was for a year. And then I went freelance. So that was 1990. I went freelance. And I've been freelance ever since. And I was really lucky. I really lucked out because I got a gig as music critic for Who magazine, which I held onto for 24 years, which was a pretty good gig. But at the same time, I was freelancing the whole time. So I never had a full-time gig. That was a freelance gig, even though it was every week. So I wrote for Rolling Stone at the same time. I wrote for the Sydney Morning Herald at the same time. And I still write for the Sydney Morning Herald to this day, in fact.
Wow. And have you done a lot of those stories where you've followed bands and gone on tour even?
I gotta say, Rach, that if I was maybe 10, 15 years older, I would have done a lot of that. If you look at the film Almost Famous, you probably had to be around in the 70s, maybe a bit of the 80s, maybe for that to happen. But with that said, in the mid 2000s, I went to the UK twice. Record companies paid for me to go to interview the Arctic Monkeys when they were just starting out. And I was there the week their album came out and got to interview them. Then that was up in Manchester, went down to London, interviewed Damon Albarn from Blur and the Gorillaz.
Wow.
Was in the studio with Placebo. They were rehearsing for a national tour. So yes, you do get to do some of that, but it's definitely not like it was for the generation older than me that worked in the 60s and 70s, who basically got to hang out with Led Zeppelin and do all sorts of terrible things.
Yeah. I know though, like we were talking off air a little bit about, the kinds of stories that you still do. And we were talking about how you still get to shadow people and do those big features that all of us want to do. I know that when I was doing entertainment writing, it became really awful towards the end because, the PRs would sit there and they would, cut you off if the question wasn't exactly what they wanted you to ask. And I used to do a lot of movie reviewing. So you'd get the same stories, the same quotes across all the weeklies, and in the end, it just wasn't fun anymore. But do you still get to, do your own thing a lot and get those bigger stories?
Because I don't really do that whole junket thing. Everyone's sitting around a table talking to the big star type thing. I kind of do. Well, I'll tell you about the most recent story I've done for Good Weekend, which is I go to New York every year to write stories. And I did a story on a guy called Matt Green, who for the last decade has been trying to walk every single street in the 5 boroughs of New York. Now, he's not a guy who is fending off reporters everywhere. He's not Brad Pitt or whatever, but he's absolutely fascinating. And I spent 10 hours in Queens walking the streets with him, walking the walk with him, to talk the talk with him, basically. And it was by far one of my favorite stories I've ever done. And it's had one of the biggest reactions of any story I've ever written. And no one knows he's not famous at all. I guess what I'm saying is that it's not always the famous people that have the fascinating stories,
That's so true. That is so true. And sometimes you think the person you're going to meet is going to be amazing and they end up being a complete dickhead.
And plus they've spoken to like 50 other people before you, right? So they've got their answers down pat. They're not going to give anything new. And I think you have to really spend a lot of time with, like I said, I was with this guy for 10 hours walking with him. Still, you may be familiar with. I spent 2 days with him here in Fremantle, and he showed me his desk in his bedroom where he works. He took me to the place where he wrote Jasper Jones, showed me the house where he wrote it. So it's that kind of thing. You got to get into someone's life and spend a lot of time with them to get underneath that sort of pat answer they're going to give you to your questions that they've had a million times. And slowly the real person, hopefully you won't get completely the real person, of course, but hopefully you'll get a bit more of a genuine story out of that person.
And are you going after those types of stories and pitching them, or are they coming to you and saying, I want you to talk to this guy and really, do a big profile?
Both those stories I just mentioned, Matt Green, the Walker, and Craig Silvey, I pitched both of them. I mean, Craig, obviously, He's one of Australia's best known and best loved writers. So Good Weekend knew who I was talking about when I said Craig Silvey, but they had no idea who Matt Green was when I pitched it. So subsequently, and I'm not telling you two anything new here, but it's all about the pitch. And I spend ages on my pitches. I do so much research, and there's no guarantee I'm going to get a story out of it. And yet I might spend a couple of days writing a pitch because I've got to do all my research, figure out the hook, the story that's going to make the editor go, I need to have this story in my magazine, and I need Barry Divola to write it. So you've got to convince them of that. You can't just say, hey, even saying, hey, there's this guy that's been walking every street in New York for the last decade. Yeah, that's interesting, but why do I need to put that in Good Weekend magazine and devote 3 pages and be one of the 3 feature stories that week? Why do I have to do it? That's your job, to pitch it in a way that they can't say no. And I always remember in the back of my head, every time I write a pitch, I have this editor's voice. She was English, and it was about 20 years ago. And every time I'd pitch, this is very early on when I was writing, every time I'd pitch a story, she'd sort of consider it, and she'd go, yeah, Barry, but what's the story? It used to annoy the hell out of me. But it really taught me something, which is like, yeah, what is the story? You can't just say, hey, this band's touring and I really like them. That's not a pitch, you know. So what? You know, what's the hook? This band's been around for 10 years. Why should I write about them now? We wrote about them 4 years ago. What's new? What's changed, you know? So the pitch is all important when you're trying to get a story across the line. And getting back to your question, Rach, about pitching or being commissioned, it's kind of a mix. So sometimes, you know, they come to me with, can you do a story about this or a story about that? And sometimes those stories I'll think, I don't know anything about that. Once an editor came to me and said, can you do a story on meerkats? And I went, what?
That'd be awesome.
I suddenly become the animal correspondent.
You get to go into the zoo and, like, you know, get into their little world.
Of it, I knew everything about meerkats. Before I did the story, I knew almost nothing. I vaguely knew what a meerkat was, and they were sort of cute. But I spent time actually in the meerkat enclosure at Taronga Zoo. It was fascinating. So this is the thing I love about freelance writing. I've been doing it for decades now, but it's always new. Every story is a whole new experience. So it's not like you're doing the same job over and over. It's like you're doing a new job every day because you're talking to someone completely different. I write a lot about podcasts now as well. I'm kind of the podcast writer for Spectrum at Sydney Morning Herald. And it's opened up a whole new world because podcasts are newish in the great grand scheme of things. And there's so much to learn from these people who are focusing on one little bit of life or one particular story, and it just gets exploded when you talk to them, when you go into the nitty-gritty.
It's so much great content with podcasts as well, but that's the same with all of those things. And I remember your story about meerkats. I did read that from the whole thing, and it was not a subject that I would have been interested in until I read it, you know.
It really is considered the definitive story about I'm amazed I didn't get a Walkley for that. Incredible reporting.
I'm quite fascinated that you might spend 1 to 2 days on a pitch, because obviously pitching comes up so much at Rachel's List, and you know there's masterclasses on pitching. I've done a webinar on pitching, and I always get asked about pitching, and you know it's this constant thing. Nobody responds to my pitches, or how do I pitch better? How many of your pitches get ignored, would you say?
These days, not so much ignored, but back in the day, constantly. I, for years and years, tried to break into the British music magazine market, Melody Maker and NME and Q. And I don't think anyone ever got back to me, ever.
Yeah.
So people out there that are having trouble now, it's not unusual. It's not you, it's them. Okay. But now I guess I've got a bit of a name, and I tend to work for the same sorts of magazines these days. So, but with that said, editors are doing more and more work and have less and less time. And
Yeah.
sometimes you do have to email them a few times politely, a week apart, to actually get a response from them, even though you've been writing for them for a long time. So yeah, it's not unusual. But as far as getting knockbacks, you're going to get knockback. I still get knockbacks for some pitches. They say, oh no, we did them last tour, or oh, that story's not quite right for us, but you might want to try. And they mention another section at the Herald or something like that. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag as far as that's concerned, but you have to build up a pretty thick skin about that kind of thing. Because if you're the type of person that sort of wilts like a wallflower when someone says no, you're not going to make it as a freelance writer, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time you aren't going to get yeses, you know, but when you do, it's like the sun shining on you and angels singing.
The planets align.
They do.
I wonder about the pitching, because some of the things that you pitch would involve things like publicists, and whether they're book publicists or music publicists or whatever. Is that hard because you're actually dealing with a third party as well? That must be tricky to line them up and the editor and have everybody agree to what you want to do.
Yeah, it is. I recently did a story on a Danish recycle artist called Thomas Dambo, who builds these gigantic wooden trolls around the world and then
as you do
around, as one does. And he did it over here in Mandurah in Western Australia. He built 6 out here. And so I did a big story on that, spent time with him as he was doing a recce around the place looking for sites, and then saw the build as well. And it had so many partners involved in that story, like Form, who were the people who instigated the thing here in WA. WA Tourism, the WA government, Mandurah, the city of Mandurah. So there's lots of people that everything had to go through to get that story over the line. And obviously everyone's got different agendas about that, what they want.
Yes.
But in the end, it's like, this was for Good Weekend magazine. They were getting a story in Good Weekend magazine, which, you know, it's probably
it's big for Mandurah.
the most prestigious weekend magazine in the country. So they knew it was getting a lot of publicity. So it's like, you've got to go, well, sorry, I can't do that, but I can do this. And in the end, I just wrote the story I wanted to write, and everyone was happy in the end, which is the main thing. So yeah, but getting back to the publicist thing, what Rach was just saying about publicists at film junkets or music, as far as it's gotten more and more restrictive over the years. It was a lot more Wild West when I was starting out, late 80s through the 90s.
Yeah.
I got to say, Rach, that whole thing about publicists sitting in, I think that's happened to me once or twice in my whole career, but I normally just go, nah.
Not doing it.
But then again, you were probably talking to big stars. But even with, you know, I've interviewed some full-on music stars, and publicists so far haven't sat in on it. Sometimes on phone interviews it's happened, and once or twice in my whole career I've asked a question and a publicist has butted in and said he won't be answering that question. And then he went on to kind of answer it.
Yeah. The
I won't say who it was, but it was a personal question, and I'd sort of tiptoed around it, but he did kind of answer it for me. So,
yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I had a couple where, still back in that day when it was really restrictive, like you say, but you know, I had a couple of experiences that were a bit more like the olden days. Like I sat on a couch in the Park Hyatt with Mandy Moore for 2 hours.
Wow.
You know, and the publicist didn't bother us. And we were having such a good chat. They just kept poking their head in and then leaving again. And, you know.
Was this pre-Ryan Adams or post-Ryan Adams?
I think it was pre. She was quite new.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But it was, I had a couple of situations like that. And then a couple of really terrible ones. I think, you know, the guy Kramer from Seinfeld.
Oh,
He
yeah.
came and he was doing a big show and like investigating the hole in the ozone layer, and every journo had to sit on stage with him, and he almost interviewed you, and he was such a
Right.
bully. And I just
Yeah.
remember that being, it's an interesting one, isn't it? So I don't do a lot of that anymore, but
And then you get the ones that are like I've got to tell you my Lou Reed story.
oh
Okay.
yes,
please
yeah,
do.
we
Yeah,
need
yeah.
to hear this.
You've talked about publicists and how they can be difficult, but then there's when the subject himself is difficult. So Lou Reed, to set it up, is one of my heroes. Like Velvet Underground's one of my favorite bands and has been for years. So Lou Reed was touring Australia in 2000, and so I put my hand up to do a story. They said, yeah, he'll do an interview. I said, how much time can I get with him? And I bargained to get 2 hours with him.
Wow.
I was going to take him book shopping. That was my plan, because I know how literary he is. Anyway, the day before the interview, the publicist called me. She sounded like she was having a nervous breakdown. Lou has cancelled everything. He's in a really bad mood. And he's said yes to 2 interviews, you and Sunrise.
Oh no, don't tell me Sunrise came before you, please.
Sunrise came before me.
Oh no. I know how this is gonna go.
Okay, I said, okay, all right. So what else? And they said, well, he said he'd do 15 minutes.
Oh no.
I said, well, that's not going to get, I'm doing a 2,000 word story here. 15 minutes isn't going to cut it. I said, where's it happening? And they told me it's a hotel down on Sydney Harbour. I said, is Sunrise doing the interview the same place? And they said, yeah. I said, are they before me? They said, yeah. I said, well, can I come in early and watch that and then my interview? That ended up being the best move I ever made. So I got there early, and Sunrise is setting up their gear and everything, as they do, an hour beforehand with lights and sound. And I knew the Sunrise journalist who was interviewing him, who's a great guy and a really good journalist, by the way, and knew his Lou Reed stuff backwards. Anyway, we're sweating because we're wondering what it's going to be like. And then the door opens and Lou Reed walks in, and I swear the temperature of the room dropped 10 degrees. And the first thing he said when he walked in was, I want to know who everyone in this room is and why they have to be here. The first thing he said, and it just went downhill from there.
Oh, no.
The next thing they said, oh, would you like to sit down, Mr. Reed, and we'll start filming? And so where they'd set it up was with this couch. And the second thing he said was, I'm not sitting in that couch. That couch is too big. I'll look too small in it. I'm going to sit in that chair over there. But because all the lights and all the cameras are set up on that couch, so they have to frantically change everything. Anyway, it went on. That story goes for about an hour, by the way. I'm going to do a whole stage show about it. But I think but it was, once again, I just wrote everything that happened, the whole thing. I didn't write much about the 15 minutes. I did write about the 15 minutes I had with him, but the whole thing about Lou Reed's personality was that what happened before the interview and what happened after the interview. There was stuff that went on after too, and I hung around for that as well. So I think it gets back to what you were talking about, Rach, about, trying to get access to people. They'd literally given me 15 minutes, but if you work it, you can get other stuff as well. And then, of course, you can interview secondary people too. It's not just talking for the Craig Silvey story. I talked to people around him. I interviewed Trent Dalton. I talked to other authors. I chatted to his publisher. So you can get much more of a rounded story if you just go around what the publicists are actually giving you with the subject, him or herself.
And do you find those big stars, though, want copy approval or want to see it or that sort of thing ever?
I've never given copy approval.
No.
Once again, it might be because it's a different level of, they're not Hollywood stars or anything. I don't really do that kind of thing. But even with major music acts, I've never been asked
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting, because I've had to do that for Hollywood people, and even some
Yeah.
Australian film people have asked for it, or their publicists, and it's a whole juggling act, and you just got to dance around it and try and do something really good. But it's a challenge. Yeah.
Read out the odd quote over the phone, but not the full thing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've had somebody who had a great chat with me for an hour and then later on said she wouldn't be quoted on 90% of what we chatted about.
Oh, God.
And I just went, well, that's okay. I don't need to talk about your kids, but maybe you could have told me that before you chatted about your kids.
Yeah, Nicole.
45 minutes.
Oh, well, who was it?
It wasn't even Nicole, no. No.
Oh God, we could talk about our bad interview stories all day, couldn't we? That would be awesome.
You write about lots of other things, but is music still it sounds like music is your first love.
Yeah, it was definitely my first love. And I wrote about it, for years and years and years. But now, strangely, Lynn, it's kind of reduced. My freelance pie, it's kind of reduced now to a lot less than it used to be. And there's a number of reasons for that. One is that music magazines have basically died.
Yeah.
Rolling Stone folded in 2018, owing me $2,500, might I add. Complete shonks. And they've restarted. Getting back, I'm going to name and shame, actually.
Careful.
Rolling Stone started up again, like last year, I think. And I called them to find out, well, I used to be a senior writer. How about, what's the story? They said, yeah, we'd love to have you back. And I said, great. What are your rates? And they said, for 1,000-word feature story, $170.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I said that too. But once again, it's another word. Seriously, I just told you guys about writing for the street papers in the late 80s. I was making more with the street papers in the late 80s than that, adjusted for inflation, and not that much adjusted for inflation, actually. This is the whole thing about music journalism now. It's anyone thinks they can do it. They can't, actually. 95% of people can't do it. And if you read a lot of music journalism now, you will see that that's the case. But everyone's doing it for nothing. They get to go to gigs free. They get to meet their heroes and whatever, and they're being paid absolute peanuts, which is why a lot of the music journalism you read now is absolutely toothless.
Which is fun when you're 21 and you're meeting your heroes, but you can't live on that and you can't have a sustainable career on that.
It's not sustainable at all. So getting back to your question about music journalism for me now, so I do write a lot less. That's one of the reasons. There's not as many outlets that you can get paid for to do it anymore. Plus, a lot of the Herald earlier this year canned their whole music review section, which I'd been writing for a while.
Yeah.
Rolling Stone, as I said, folded. I was writing for them all the time. Who magazine, that was in the 2015, I think, canned their whole reviews section. Yeah. So that gig ended. So a lot of avenues that I used to write for regularly with music just aren't there anymore. So there was that. There's also, I wanted to write about other things and have for a long time. So I've always written about other stuff: TV, film, popular culture, the arts, and travel as well. I do a fair bit of travel writing as well when there's not a pandemic happening. That took that slice of the pie out, I can tell you right away. So, and that's stuff I'm really interested in as well. Like this recent trip to New York, there was that story that I did a story on a guy who's the most prolific artist in history. He does 40 to 60 paintings a day. And I went and watched him paint in Brooklyn live. And he does 48 paintings at once. He just goes around them like this. He was incredible. So I'm just interested in characters, people who are obsessive about something and just go for it. And I want to get inside their heads and find out how they do it. So there's a lot of stuff I want to write about that's not music. With that said, I'm still up for doing music stories. And if there's something I love, an older artist that I've adored for years, or a new artist that's wonderful, and I listen to them and just think I have to interview them, then I'll do that any day of the week for sure.
Yeah. I know that you used to live in Sydney and you're now based in Perth. How has that affected, your work in any way, or were you affected by the pandemic?
Well, the first part of that, I thought it would affect me in a big way moving to Perth, because my ideal city, as I've said, is New York, and it's moving even further away from New York.
Yes.
But being away from the East Coast, where obviously the media is concentrated, I worried I would be out of the loop. But honestly, the last 5 years, I've written more, and I think I've written better stories here than in years. So I think part of it maybe is because I just really put myself out there, because I knew I was moving here.
Yeah.
And I thought I really have to redouble my efforts. And I think as a result, I've really got a lot more stories and better stories than I did before. And the other thing is, it's 2022. You don't really, being where you are doesn't really matter so much anymore. It probably did 15 years ago, 20 years ago, but in this day and age, it doesn't really matter as much. The other thing is, there's some stories like that Thomas Dambo building the giant sculptures here in Mandurah, which is an hour's drive south of here. Some stories fall into your lap, or you're looking at stories. Craig Silvey, just down the road, it's like some stories you can think, well, I've kind of got this almost to myself.
Yeah. You've cornered the market.
When they do come up, it's like, wait a minute, Divola's over there. Get the bald guy on the line. He'll do it.
Yeah.
Handy.
A lot of music stuff used to be phone stuff anyway. If you're doing international acts before they tour here, you'd be doing it phone or Zoom anyway. So if you're in Perth, it doesn't make any difference, or if you're in Sydney. So that doesn't matter so much anyway. So short answer is no, it's been fine moving over here. And Perth's great. As Lynn said in her intro, I'm playing in 3 bands here. The music scene here is incredible. It's heaps better than Sydney, I tell you.
Yeah.
Way more opportunities. And the books, the literature scene here too is amazing. When my novel came out last year, I visited every bookstore in Perth. It took me as long to do that as coming across to Sydney and visiting bookstores there. And our population's way less, which proves that Perth people read more and are more literate.
They're fighting words.
I've only been here 5 years and I'm already talking like I've been here all my life.
Yeah. So tell us about your novels. It's a good segue. So you've written quite a few, including the last one, Driving, which is Stevie Fracasso, is it?
I was Driving Stevie Fracasso. I probably should have titled it differently, shouldn't I?
That is a tricky one.
Rhymes with Picasso.
Okay, that makes sense. So, and that's got a bit of rock and roll in it anyway. Tell us how it came. Did you always want to write novels, or?
Yeah, I did. And I've written 9 books, but it's actually my first novel. So I wrote 4 nonfiction books, one about music fandom, one about toy collectors, one about backpackers, and one about guitars. And then I wrote 3 kids' picture books with former Mambo illustrator, Paul McNeil. And then I wrote a book of short fiction called 1970 something, which won a few awards, which was great. And after I did that, I thought, okay, bite the bullet, Divola, pull the finger out. It's time to do the novel. So I wrote this book, Driving Stevie Fracasso. And as you say, it does have a big music element, but it's all set in the US. A lot of it's set in New York. And it's about 2 brothers, a washed up rock star and a jaded New York music journalist who are long lost brothers, haven't seen each other in 30 years. And they find themselves in this stolen Nissan Stanza driving from Austin, Texas to New York City in the days leading up to 9/11. So it's set in 2001. And so it's this fictional story, but it's got a lot of the things that I've talked about with you guys today. It's got music in it, it's got New York in it, and it's got this road trip thing where they go through New Orleans, Memphis, Nashville, Philadelphia, which are all places I've been to in my travels as a journalist. So I was basically throwing everything I loved into this fictional story about these two brothers who I just came up with. So it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. So yeah, I want to write more. I'm working on another one at the moment. So hopefully I'll get a few more in before I kick it.
Do you find that you work on everything together at the same time? Like you just devote pockets of time to your books and to your journalism and that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's a really good question because it's tough fitting everything in, as you ladies would know. And then there's family life. I mean, I've got to squeeze everything in these days because 4 days a week I do all the school drop-offs, pickups because my wife's got a full-time job those days. So I used to, cycle to work and start at 8:30 and finish at 6. And now it's like I start at 9 and then I got to think at 2:30. It's like, piano lessons today, or it's netball today, or it's dance practice today. So
that's what aftercare's for, Barry. You need aftercare, mate. Yeah.
So, but the weird thing is, though, that I'm managing to do just as much, if not more, in that compressed time because I'm working smarter. Oh, it's a cliche, I know.
Is it? Wow. It makes you more efficient.
I think we need that secret because there's no way I can get a lot done between the days when I don't have aftercare and I have to leave at 2:30.
I think it's just because I've just realized, well, that's all the time I've got today. So if I don't do it, I've got that deadline tomorrow. Are you going to say you're not going to make that deadline? So far, I've never done that, touch wood. It might happen one day. But if the deadline's looming, you've got to get it done, right? So subsequently for journalism, that's fine. But getting back to the question about fitting in books and creative projects, there's not usually, unless you've got a book contract ahead of time, you don't have a deadline looming. So that often gets pushed to the back of the cart. I hate, but sometimes you just got to get up at 5:30 in the morning and do an hour and a half before the kids get up and do it then. Also, lately, the last 6 months, I've formed a writing group with a collection of book authors over here in Perth that I've met. And we meet every Wednesday from 9 till 2. And we just sit there and kick each other's asses, basically. We're all working on new novels. And so having 4 or 5 other writers around you that are working on their books, you'd be amazed how that really whips you into shape when it comes to
great idea.
Words. So that's been really helpful for that. I love Wednesdays now because that's when I can really get some concentrated writing done.
Yeah, amazing. It's interesting because so many journos that we talk to and, ourselves, we have moved away from, we still do a lot of feature writing, but we also mix it up now with so much commercial work and copywriting and content marketing and that sort of thing. But it sounds like you don't do a lot of that. Like you're still very much, in that old school, print world, I suppose. Yeah.
Although with that said, I have done a fair bit of copywriting in my time and just actually, I'm about to take up a bit of that soon, actually. I can't talk about it, but I did it for a while because I tend to say yes to everything.
Yes.
And then,
it's a bad habit.
And I did a fair bit with a fairly big, let's just say it was a very big US music streaming service.
Yes.
I can't contractually say who it was, but you can put two and two together.
We may guess,
And we would get assignments on a Friday afternoon and have to get them in on Monday morning. And I was doing them on weekends and I did it for a while and the money was okay. And the work was, the work was what it was. It was writing about music, but very, very set and structured, as you would both know.
As parameters,
work and copywriting, you've got to sort of just jump through all these hoops and it's so incredibly structured. And after a while, I just thought, oh, you know what? I'd rather pitch a 3,000 word story to Good Weekend, who I got to say do pay a commensurate rate for what you should be paid for a story that you are spending a lot of time on. And I'd rather do that for 3 weeks or a month or whatever it is than do all these bits of copywriting that aren't really super creative to get that same amount of money.
Yeah.
So I kind of made that decision a little while ago and thought, yeah, I'm just going to stop doing that and concentrate on this stuff and try and make up my pot of money, my little pot of money to try and do my other stuff. Because, getting back to books, I mean, books is a great way to not make money.
That's what we hear.
So sad.
Unless it's Trent Dalton or your Craig Silvey or whoever, I mean, who are obviously in another realm. But the vast majority of us don't make money at all, really, apart from our advances, which aren't very big for something that you might spend 1, 2, 5 years writing. You know, it's ridiculous. It's kind of like, thanks for playing. Here's a little bit of money to get a coffee. It's kind of like that. So, my journalism is to make, I love writing journalism. I totally love it. But obviously that's my breadwinner. And then books is my passion, but I'm under no illusions that I'm going to be making money from books, though.
Yeah.
I think there was a study that came out last week about what authors make. And it's gone up from 12,500 a year to 18,500 or something, which is still way under minimum wage. But 18 grand, that can be a slice of your pie, and then you add all your other bits in.
I don't know. They must have been interviewing Trent Dalton as well for that one. I mean, he must be bringing up the average because, as far as I can tell, advances have not advanced over the many years that I've noticed. And getting back to journalism, word rates, I mean, they're almost exactly the same from when I started, really. Most of the time, almost exactly the same.
Sometimes less.
Gone backwards.
Yes, sometimes less, that's true.
Yeah.
So what does your average day look like? You talked a little bit about it, because what are you working on at the moment? You're obviously doing another book.
Yes.
You got the odd feature story coming through.
Yeah. Well, this recent trip to New York, I was there for 12 days and I'm just looking at my wall chart, 10 stories in 12 days I reported. Wow. So I'm working on the last one right now about the Chelsea Hotel, which has just reopened to guests. Yeah. For a decade, it's had no guests. And I stayed there for a couple of nights and got to see when Leonard Cohen lived and where Patti Smith and Robert Mapplethorpe lived and all that kind of thing. So I'm doing that for Qantas magazine right now. Not as I speak to you. I'm not that
multitasking.
And I'm writing a story I started writing a bit for the Australian Women's Weekly over the last couple of years, and I'm doing a story. It's bizarre. I spent time with this 97-year-old woman here in Perth who was an aviation pioneer, the first woman to have a pilot's license in WA. Wow. And it was wonderful talking to her. Stuff like that gets back to the whole thing about you learn something from every story you do.
Yeah.
And then I'm working on getting back to pictures, Rach. I'm working on some pictures at the moment.
Yeah,
Good Weekend and for Spectrum, because they go on hiatus over Christmas and January, and then they need stories after that. So I'm working on some more pictures for that, and I'm hoping to travel next year, and a couple of places that I'm going in April. I'm pitching some stories for where I'm heading.
All right.
So those Good Weekend stories are really like 3 weeks out of your life to do?
Yeah, they can be even longer. I mean, you're not constantly working on them sometimes, like that. The sculptor guy, the guy that makes the giant wooden trolls, I would have spent time with him when he was in Australia in, say, I think it was July. And then they didn't start building them till September. So I spent time on it in July. Spent a whole day with him. I'd done all my research beforehand. Probably spoke to him for 4 hours. I transcribed all of that while it was all fresh and got my notebook with all my notes in it, typed out all the notes. then in September, when they started building them, I went down to Mandurah again and spent time actually talking to everyone that was putting them together, and saw a finished one and a half finished one, and spoke to the mayor of Mandurah to get some color on that. And so it's kind of spread out over that time. And then I had to write the thing and file it in October. So even though it went from July to October, I didn't work all that time on that story. I did heaps of other stories in between. But sometimes it can be like that. And then other times it's just intense. It's like, there's an interview, it's with this person, it's happening tomorrow, and I need the story by Monday. Sometimes it's like that. These last minute things that you have to turn around like that.
It sounds like you're really busy. Do you ever have slow patches?
No, not really. It's pretty constant. In fact, right now, Christmas, New Year is actually one of the busiest times of year for me, because as I said, I write most of my writings for Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, all the Fairfax 9 places. And a lot of the staff writers go on holidays, Christmas, New Year period. So they rely on freelancers to fill the gaps.
Yeah.
So it's often a really busy time from December, early December, through to the end of summer, really, for freelance writers like myself, which is fine, you know.
Yeah.
What else am I going to do? Relax?
It's an idea.
Yeah. Well, we do often hear about tech tips from our guests. We do quite love that, because, you know, see what sort of tools people use.
You won't get them from me.
A lot of people say I don't use anything. Word. That's it.
I'll show you what I use. I've got, see this? I know your listeners won't be able to see this, but it's a Moleskine notebook. You've got a whole row of like 2 shelves of them full of every trip I've ever taken. I'm an inveterate. I just love taking notes on everything. And I've just got shelves of them with notes down. This one says NYC October 2022, and that's one of 2 that I filled on this recent trip. Wow. And I use a little Olympus dictaphone, digital dictaphone, to record interviews, as well as taking notes in my notebook. I've got a MacBook Air, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I'm pretty non-techie. I'm pretty old school. I mean, and I'm so old that when I started in journalism, I was using an electric typewriter, you know?
Yeah. Well, I did too. So I get that.
And then got a Mac Classic, right? With a little screen on it.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, well. Sounds like you're doing well without the tech.
Yeah.
Well, look, what is the one interview that's eluded you, the one person you'd really like to talk to if you could?
Oh, wow. Well, see, a year ago, I would have said Elvis Costello, and a year ago, I got to interview him.
Oh, wow.
He was my musical hero when I was 19, and he kicked down the door for music for me. And all of a sudden, a girl loaned me, an English girl I met, loaned me the first Elvis Costello album. Yeah. And I'd never heard of him. And she gave it to me on a Friday afternoon. I remember this. And by Monday, I was a completely different person. I was suddenly cool. And so all of a sudden I'm listening to The Clash and The Jam and XTC and all these bands. And it just opened up this door to me. And one of the bands I'm in now is called Radio, which is named after an Elvis Costello song. We play all that stuff from the late 70s, early 80s. So, yeah, I always wanted to interview him, and for some reason I never had. And then a year ago, the opportunity came up, and we did that. I did that thing. Rach, you might be a bit like this too. When you meet famous people, you think, I'm going to be cool. Yeah. I'm going to be cool. Yes. I'm going to be cool. And normally I manage to do it. And I just started off and I said to him, normally I'm cool in interviews, and I just blurted out what a great fan, how I was in a band named after him and all that. And he was, of course, completely lovely, and started talking about his fandom.
Oh, wow.
From back in the day and the people he admired. And yeah, it was lovely. And he was everything I wanted him to be, which was great.
Oh, that's so
nice. It's so nice, isn't it, when you meet a hero and they're just awesome. Yeah.
And then there's Lou Reed.
Yeah. There's always Lou Reed.
You win some, you lose some.
So true. Oh my God. Oh, that's
So where do people find you?
Well, getting back to tech, Lynn, I don't even have a website.
Oh God.
But you can find me. I don't know if you guys have ever talked about Authory
Yes.
on your website.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I did
we
find
do.
you on Authory, Barry.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
So just in case people haven't heard before, Authory, AUTHORY, is a website where writers can have, every time that a story comes up online, it goes onto this Authory page with their name attached. So if you go to the Authory site and put in Barry Divola, you'll see everything that's appeared online by me. Also, like I said, most of what I write, a vast majority is for the Fairfax papers. And if you go to Sydney Morning Herald or The Age and type in Barry Divola, all my stories will come up. And at the bottom, there's a picture of my little bald pinhead. And next to it's a little envelope, which you can email me and send me hate mail and say I disagree completely with everything.
Do people do that?
Oh, yeah. Not these days so much because I don't review as much. But when I was a reviewer, and I totally understood, and I would reply to them. People would always be shocked because I'd reply to them and say, thanks so much for your email. I totally understand where you're coming from. I used to send letters like this all the time to reviewers I disagreed with. And some of them are just like, Morrissey can do no wrong. How can you say that was a bad album? They're just one track mind. But others would write these very well-reasoned letters. And I'd love responding to those because I'd say, I totally understand your argument. That was a really good point you made. And we'd have a bit of an exchange, which is lovely.
Yeah. How great. Well, we'll have to hunt you down on Authory. It's very cool, actually. We've got a special for Rachel's List members on Authory. They get 30% off. It's a very, if you don't have a website like Barry,
it's a good option. Yeah.
I'm happy with it. And they're not even paying me.
They should be. I've got a contact. I'll give it to you.
We'll talk after.
My people will talk to your people.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Barry, this has been so great to talk.
Such a great chat.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your career with us, and it's just been amazing. So we really appreciate it.
And good luck with the book. Hopefully, hopefully we sell a couple more for you. It sounds great. And I feel bad that I haven't read it, so I will be buying it this afternoon.
I want to see proof of that. It's an ideal Christmas read.
That's right.
Perfect.
That's right.
I'll also send you, Lynn, I did I put together a Spotify playlist of every song I mention in the story and also songs that inspired and influenced the book.
That sounds fun. I think we should put that in the show notes. That would be great.
I'll send both of those along to you.
That'd be fun. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll pop all that in the show notes. We'll pop Barry's Authory link in there, link to the latest book and the Spotify playlist. So people can come and stalk you, hunt you down, send you hate mail or
whatever.
Love mail.
I need more hate mail. I'm getting far too much positive mail these days.
Oh, that's so
I can't have that. Okay. And don't forget to rate and review and all those sort of, boring things that do help our podcast get higher up in the ratings as well.
Yes, and help people find us.
So that brings us to the end of this episode. And of course, Rach, it's the end of the year for us too. So we'll see everybody back in the new year. We're back on January 9 with an exciting new guest. And we hope everyone has a great holiday. Thank you so much to our wonderful sponsors, Rounded, who've been looking after us all year and helping us to bring this podcast to you. Thanks so much. Check out Rounded at rounded.com.au. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.